Now, when you have a crush on someone, don't tell anyone you know. Seriously, a crush is meant to be kept secret because let's say you tell one of the guys, they're going to end up going for it if they're not loyal to you. And let's just say they're going to go steal your girl and then more drama is going to happen to the point where you're trapped in an Airbnb with your supposed crush that ends up actually doing something else with something else. And let me just explain the story because it gets really intense and really insane. But yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to another crazy but super embarrassing story. Now, today's story all takes place, funny enough, back in my grade 9 year. Now in grade 9, there was a girl that I kind of had a crush on. By kind of, I mean, I liked her, but I didn't know much about her. But the way she looked at me and the way I looked at her, I don't know. In some way, it made me feel like we had some sort of connection. And I remember I liked this girl a lot, but I didn't really know if she actually liked me, to be honest, at this time. And it got really weird because every time we would like cross by in the hallway, we end up staring at each other. And for example, when we would sit in class, we end up staring at each other. And no, it wouldn't be like little glances. It would be like full on like staring contests to the point where it was pretty obvious there was something between us that we didn't really know what was going on. But me being in grade 9 at this time, I wasn't really a player. I was really shy at the time and I was really nervous to go up to girls and kind of just play the game, I guess you would say. I didn't gain that confidence till like grade 10 or like halfway through my grade 9 year. So knowing this, I remember basically was a helpless romantic in love, and I did the one thing that most guys end up doing when they end up liking someone, and that is go up to their friends and tell them. I remember around lunchtime, me and my homies, we all ended up sitting in a table and we all ended up eating lunch together. And I ended up looking at one of my buddies, and this guy was like a lady slayer, I guess, in a way. I don't know. At the time, he had more girlfriends than I ever did. And I looked at him and I told him, yo, bro, I'm just curious, like, what's the best way to like approach a girl? What do you mean, Bubba? Like, are you into someone? Like, are you like, you know, thinking about someone? Yeah, I am. And like, I don't know how to like approach her, if that makes any sense. I mean, like, who's the girl? It depends on what girl it is. I remember I ended up telling him like who the girl was and like, you know, why I feel like she was interested in me. And that's when he said, oh, well, I mean, like, bro, I could just be a W wingman and just go ask her for you. Seriously, you would do that? Yeah, bro. Like, if anything, I could probably help you, like, you know, get her number or something. Okay, then, yeah, sure. Okay. Wait, how do we do this? Here, just follow me. Me and my homie, we ended up standing up and leaving the rest of our friends, and we ended up going down the hallway where her locker was. And we saw her standing near her locker and basically talking with like some of her girlfriends that were there. And he looks at me and he's like, you sure you want me to do this? Yeah, dude, like she's great. Okay, here, just stay here. I got this. He ends up walking up with confidence, and I started studying his moves on how he walks up to girls, funny enough. But he walks up there and he looks at her and they start talking. Now, I was not close enough to hear what was going on, but I had full faith in my buddy at the time. He's talking with this girl, and one thing led to another. He ends up pulling out his phone, and that's it. I don't really know what happened next, but he walks back to me and he's like, bro, just give it some time. I think she'll be interested in you. So did you get me her number? Oh, nah, she's not like interested like that yet, bro. But down the line, maybe she will be in the future. Okay, that's a little weird. Wait, so what happened? What'd you tell her? Oh, just don't worry about it. Let's just say it didn't work out, but it's okay, man. I know many other girls you can go hit on. At that moment, my heart sank because like I, you know, had full faith in my buddy, and I was like, okay, well, I guess he wasn't interested in me. And then I realized 2 weeks later, something insane happened where my buddy ended up actually, funny enough, started dating my crush. But other than my heart sinking, I realized that she was officially off the list, and that, you know, since she's dating my buddy now, there was no possible chance I could get with her. When deep down in the back of my mind, and probably deep down in my heart that sank earlier, I knew that I still liked her. From there, years went on, and my buddy was still dating this girl, and they were dating till grade 12, our final year of high school. They were together for a very long time, and I remember from this point, I'm like, you know, damn, like they're gonna be high school sweethearts. Things are perfect. And to be fair, like even though it was kind of rude what he did, he was still part of the boys, and he was still, you know, part of our close friend group that we had back in high school. And, you know, we were all really close friends. And one thing I started to realize over the years of their relationship was that they got into a lot of different arguments about, you know, liking about girls' Instagram photos, to basically talking to other girls, from her talking to other guys. It was a big mess, to the point where a lot of their drama really scoured around the school and most people knew about it. But aside from that, knowing that it was our grade 12 year though, we wanted to make sure that our grade 12 year was still fun without the whole entire drama thing going on. One day, me and my homies in my grade 12 year, we all ended up sitting together at lunchtime. We all sat down next to each other. Knowing that years went by and how fast high school went through with the years, I'm not gonna lie, we were all pretty different people. Like I went from being a shy, quiet grade 9 kid to being a massive player in grade 12, graduating, not really knowing what he wanted to do in the future. And knowing that finals were coming up and everything, we all agreed to make a plan that after finals, all of us would go hang out and go on a little vacation together. What vacation? Well, we ended up going to a hot springs that was like basically like, you know, a vacation spot in our home city. And we all decided to book an Airbnb together and basically basically go enjoy it. Now, at the time when we were all sitting together at lunch, we made a very specific rule that it'd be only guys in that B&B, okay? All of us would be a guy's trip, it'd be a guy's vacation, and that's it. Simple as that. But let's just say after finals passed by, we ended up getting a message in the group chat from the guy that ended up taking my crush originally back in grade 9. And he says, "Yo guys, I don't think I can go on the trip. Is it cool if I get my money back for the B&B?" "Why? Why can't you go?" "My girl said that unless she's going, I'm not allowed to go. We're kind of like in a tricky situation." "Ugh, you gotta be kidding me again," is what one of my other buddies said. And it got really weird and awkward, and I'm not gonna lie, it got to the point where all of us guys just ended up agreeing that she could come as long as she wasn't in the way. I remember my homie was super happy about this, and he told his girl, and he ended up being able to come for the vacation that we planned. And let's just say on the day of the vacation, things got really weird, because I remember we all ended up basically meeting up. And I want to say this, my buddy back in grade 9 that ended up taking the girl that I liked, compared to now in our grade 12 year, we were two very different people. Like, he went from being, you know, a rising star that many people liked in grade 9 to being a bum in grade 12. And for me, well, I was kind of the opposite. I went from being a really shy, quiet kid to being, well, a cool guy with a car that pulled a lot of girls. So obviously things kind of, I guess you could say, flipped for me and him. And when it came to the day of the vacation, I remember I ended up having the job to pick up everybody with my car, since I had a car at the time. I remember I drove over to everyone's houses, and when I drove over to my buddy's place that had the girlfriend, two of my buddies were already sitting in the back, and my buddy comes up and says, "Yo, Bubba, can you open the trunk?" I ended up opening the trunk, and obviously his girl came out and said, "I am not sitting in the back. You have to sit in the back with your friends." When she said this, I remember my buddy was like, "Oh, babe, come on. It's just my homies. Like, it's not that big of a deal." "No, babe, I'm gonna sit in the front with Bubba, okay? It's not my fault you can't drive." Yeah, let's just say the tension was really built up there, but let's just say she ended up sitting in the front with me, and we ended up going on the way driving. As we're driving, one thing I started to realize was the same thing that happened back in grade 9, where basically me and her kept looking at each other very weirdly, to the point where people in the back seat started to realize, being like, "Yo, Bubba, you good? You can't keep your eyes on the road?" "Huh? Oh, yeah, I am. Sorry, just, you know, long day." "Has it really been a long day, Bubba? Is everything okay?" When she said this, I remember it felt super weird seeing that she was concerned about me. And honestly, like, I don't know. I will say this, things got really, really awkward. Over time, like, I didn't really know what to think or what to say. And to be honest, since she was dating my buddy, it was my main goal not to really talk to her or basically, you know, conversate with her at all, because she wasn't even supposed to be part of this vacation in the first place. And also, I want to be a W man's and not steal his girl. At least at the time, that's kind of what I thought, even though she turned me down. When we finally got to the vacation spot, I remember all of us guys, we ended up going into the B&B and unloading our bags. Now, the thing about this B&B was that there was enough rooms for all of us, right? But at the same time, for some reason, the locks on the B&B were really weird, because there was a specific code that would change like every hour, and apparently the B&B owner had to message us what the code was. And I remember it was like kind of weird, but at the same time, it was like, okay, I mean, like, you know, it's really safe, at least, is what we thought. But as time went on, I remember it got really, really weird, because after, you know, us having a good day on vacation, throughout the entire single day, I kept realizing that me and this girl, we kept having these random eye contact moments where it felt like it was back in grade 9. At this moment, I don't know why, but those old feelings that I had in my stomach started to come back, and it got really awkward to the point where I didn't really know what to say to her. To be honest, every time she would try to conversate with me or try to talk to me, I would try to refuse and ignore it and just hang out with the guys, because obviously she was dating my homie at the time. No way I was gonna speak to her. But then towards late at night, on the first night of the B&B, I remember things got really intense, because we all started basically sitting down and, you know, playing board games, and basically started talking to each other and watching the game on TV. And one thing led to another. For some reason, in our homie's bedroom with his girlfriend, a loud argument started happening. It was super weird, and I'm like, yo, like, what's that argument going on up there? And we started to hear the argument about, apparently she liked someone else, but he was like, you know, not letting her go. And it was like this whole like weird like situation. To be honest, I didn't really hear much about it, nor can I really talk about it, because to be honest, it's old news. But then one thing led to another. I ended up seeing this guy coming down the stairs and just leaving the B&B. He just straight up leaves and slams the door. Everyone gets up, you know, starts thinking, yo, like, should we go after him and stuff? And then since there was like 3 other dudes, including me, the other 2 were like, okay, well, you know what? You come with me. We're gonna go see what's going on with him. Okay, what should I do? And when I said, what should I do? Right away, we end up hearing his girlfriend come downstairs being like, Bubba, can you stay here? I'm not feeling well. At this moment, I remember my other 2 homies just look at me and they're like, okay, Bubba, you're staying here. And they just left. left. And I was stuck with this girl. And when they left, I remember it was like super late at night. Obviously at this time I was worried, but then I ended up sitting on the couch, beside her, and I realized she started crying. I ended up asking her like, yo, is everything all right? Is everything okay? But she just kept saying how like, times have changed and how, in the beginning of the relationship, he was a good guy, and then he ended up becoming a jerk over time. And I don't really know. It was really random stuff that I really didn't need to know. By the way, quick advice for anyone that's in a relationship: whatever happens between you guys stays between you guys. It should not be spread out amongst any friends or family or anything like that. Unless it's like immediate danger, then for sure you should. But back to what I was saying with the storyline. After like an hour of me trying to make sure she was okay, she ends up basically looking at me and saying, Baba, I don't understand. Back in grade 9, like, I always thought you liked me, but you never walked up to me. Was there like something wrong with me? What? No, I just, I was shy back then. I didn't really know what I was doing. Wait, so you did like me? Kinda? I mean, like, it's such a long time ago. I don't really remember, is what I told her. But then she ended up looking at me again, and we ended up locking eyes. And that's when she started to lean closer, and funny enough, she ended up kissing me. At that moment, though, I felt super weirded out. I'm like, yo, this should not be happening. So I ended up pushing her off, and I'm like, yo, you're dating my homie. Like, this is not right. What are you doing? She ends up crying, being like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. And, she was panicking. But then after like 10 minutes later, we ended up keeping our distance between each other, and then we ended up hearing a knock on the door from the B&B. Now, when the door was knocked, I remember I ended up going and trying to open the door, but I couldn't open it because, like I said earlier, there was like a specific code every hour you had to get to open the B&B. And I remember I'm like, yo, boys, is that you? Yeah, Bubba, we're outside. Open the door. I can't open the door. Why can't you? Because I don't have the code. I think I should get the code. Here, let me check. And realizing that the Airbnb owner didn't send us an update code on what the code is actually for the door anymore. So they were locked out. And I'm like, yo, if they're locked out, that means I'm locked in with this guy's girlfriend. So it was super awkward. And I remember I ended up going back in there, and I'm like, yo, we're trapped in here, by the way. And when I mentioned to her that we were trapped, she stood up and she looks at me instantly in the eyes and she said, wait, really? It's just me and you? Yeah. And then that's when she walks up to me and she grabs me by the shirt and says, Bubba, you cannot mention anything about this. And we end up going up to my bedroom that I had at the B&B, and we ended up doing the devil's tango. At this moment, I didn't really know what to think, because I'm not gonna lie, this made me really unattracted to her, but at the same time kind of grossed out that she was a cheater. I don't know, I guess all my feelings from back then in grade 9 definitely disappeared at this time, and knowing that we just did the devil's tango definitely made things a lot weirder. From there, I remember like 4 hours went by, and finally the Airbnb guy answered, and I ended up hearing the door unlock because you could hear like this weird like zzz unlocking sound, and I start panicking, and I look at the girl that used to be my crush, and I'm like, yo, put on your clothes quick. So she puts on her clothes and she runs straight to the room where her boyfriend was supposed to be in. As for me, well, I was laying in bed, and then afterwards my homies all come upstairs and walk into my room, and they're like, yo, Bubba, what are you doing? Huh? What? I'm just laying in bed. What's going on? Pretending that I was asleep. They look at me and they're like, yo, where's my girlfriend? I think she's in your room, bro. Oh, okay, sorry, you can go back to bed now. They all end up leaving my room, and I end up going to bed that night knowing what I did. And honestly, I will say this, I insanely regret it, but I guess that's what happens when you're trapped with your old crush in the B&B. And I remember when me and her were both underground in the sewer, no joke, she looks over at me and says, well, I mean, we're already down here and we're alone, so like, why not? Wait, what? And let's just say we did things that not even the Ninja Turtles would like. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy but also super embarrassing story. So today's story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was actually my grade 10 year. Now in grade 10, I took a science class. If you guys don't know, it's mandatory for all students in high school to take science. And me, I never really mind science, but one thing I can say, if it gets to the point where it's dangerous, that's when I start not liking it. One thing I realized definitely for sure though growing up is that I could never be a doctor as well. But besides that, I remember when I entered inside my science class, we were doing a unit where basically we were talking about global warming and seeing if the air was different between cities and also the jungle, I guess, or forest as we have here in Canada. And our teacher ended up walking in front of the class and saying, okay, students, we're gonna be matching you guys up in pairs. Bubba, you're with this girl. And that's when he pointed out a girl in my class that not a lot of people liked because she was known for getting in people's minds really weirdly. What does that mean? Well, you guys will see later on in the story. But I remember I ended up basically pairing up with her, and me and this girl, we ended up having a project where we had to go into the forest and we had to go into the city and see the difference in air quality. I didn't mind this project, and I thought this was gonna be something quick and easy we could just finish off after school. So I remember when we ended up getting into our group, she ended up looking at me saying, oh, do you want to like just get this project done and just go today after school? Yeah, sure. Like, it shouldn't take more than an hour, right? No, it definitely shouldn't. We'll be 100% okay. Okay, but let's just say this project ended up giving us way more trouble than it should have been. Because I remember right after school finally came around, and me and this girl, we ended up going towards the forest. But as we were on the way there walking, because at this time I didn't have my car, she looks over at me and says, I'm just curious, a lot of girls talk about you at school. Like, what's your problem? What do you mean what's my problem? Well, like, I don't know, like a lot of girls say that, like, you know, you're kind of a player. At that moment, I knew what she was talking about, because like I said earlier, in my grade 10 year, I was a player and I didn't know any better, and no one should do what I do. But I remember I ended up just basically kind of like ignoring her questions, because it got to the point where she started asking me questions that were way too personal. Like, no, you don't get to know if I have daddy issues, and no, my mom still loves me and still makes me dinner, even still to this day. But going on, I remember as we were in the forest, we end up finishing the part where we're supposed to, you know, finish up the testing of air quality, whatever that means. And this girl looks over at me and says, so like, are you really like that big? What do you mean? I'm only like 5'10". No, like actually, like, you know what I mean? Like, are you like hung? At that moment, I felt really uncomfortable, because a girl asking that, especially in the forest, well, if it was any other girl, you guys would probably know what I would do, and I don't really need to say it. But at the same time, this girl I was not interested in, because once again, this girl had a really big mouth. So knowing this, I ended up basically ignoring her question, and we ended up just talking about the project like we were supposed to. But this is where things get kind of awkward, because I remember we ended up basically started heading towards the city, and from the city to the forest, it was like a 30-minute walk, not even. So as me and this girl were walking, we ended up stopping by and getting some McDonald's. Not the best choice in food, but at the same time, McDonald's, please sponsor me. I know you sponsored Kai Sinat, but I like eating food too, and also I could gain some weight. But honestly, after we finished eating, me and her, we ended up heading towards the city just to finish our project. And once we got there, I remember we ended up doing the project, we ended up finishing things up, and me and her were both exhausted. We were ready to go home and just get done with this stupid, dumb project that no one liked. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care about global warming, nor do I feel like it's real. Because, like, what? We still have seasons, don't we? And this is where everything messes up. And before I tell you guys what messed up, real quick, I just want to say you guys should definitely follow my Twitch. I stream on there almost every day, and I'm probably streaming right now as you're watching this video. So go ahead and do that. But I remember as me and the girl were walking on the sidewalk of the city we were in, we ended up walking side by side, and this girl says something insane where she says, so like, do I have to like pay you to like me, or like, are you not gonna give me a taste? And at that moment, I ended up looking at her, not looking at the direction I was walking, and I ended up walking over some caution tape and falling into the sewer. I fell inside a sewer. Like, you guys know those sewer gates that's supposed to be covered up, but it's covered up with these like weird line things that don't really actually help out, because people still drop their phones, wallets, keys. You guys know the whole gist of it. Well, basically, for some reason, this caution tape was covering a hole that was leading to the sewer, and it wasn't covered. I don't know why. I guess they were doing some sort of construction there, but I ended up falling into it when this girl said the most craziest question. And when I fell in, I remember I hurt my legs so bad. Like, my ankles were burning from the landing I did, because I ended up landing on my feet. It wasn't a crazy drop. I want to say it was like almost a 7-foot drop, which isn't that bad, but honestly, it definitely did hurt my leg. At that moment, I ended up looking up and I realized I was stuck in the sewer, and that's when I yelled out saying, yo, can you go get like a cop or something? Can you call for help? Yeah, no problem. I can call for help real quick. Can you throw up your phone? At that moment, I ended up looking for my phone, but at the same time, I didn't want to throw my phone up, because I don't know if this girl's actually going to catch it, and I had the newest iPhone at the time, and I didn't want her to break it. So I remember I ended up just telling her, yo, just take out your phone. Why do you need mine? I don't know. Like, I don't really have service in the city. What? At that moment, I didn't understand what's wrong with this girl or what she was even talking about. I think this girl was actually somewhat dumb, but to be fair, she was blonde, so I don't really blame her. But it got to the point where this girl started calling out saying, yo, can anyone help us? Help, my friend's stuck down there. And then what she ends up doing next is she looks into the sewer, sees me, and she ends up jumping down with me. Why? I have no idea. But she ended up jumping, and I remember she ended up landing on her feet as well, and she looks over at me saying, oh my goodness, wow, that actually really hurt. What are you doing down here? Is the first thing I said to her, because there was no way this girl literally decides to jump into the sewer I got stuck in just to help me. But I don't understand the point of what this girl was trying to do. And it got to the point where me and her started arguing in the sewer. I started yelling at her because I'm like, yo, you're supposed to, you know, get someone to get us out of here. And that's when the girl said, okay, well, why don't you just whip out your phone and call someone? I remember I pulled out my phone, and since we were stuck in the sewer, for some reason, my phone didn't actually work. I don't know why, but for some reason, I couldn't call anybody. funny, and I had no bars whatsoever. And to be fair, since I was doing the science project, I was on my phone a lot, totally, absolutely ignoring the fact that we were doing the science project and mostly texting other girls. But basically, I'm not gonna lie, my phone was basically dead. Okay, it basically was dead. It was useless. It was at like 3% and I had no service. I couldn't do anything about it. Okay, so knowing that, I remember I ended up just telling this girl that my phone doesn't work, and me and her, we ended up staying down there yelling out of the little hole that we fell in. We kept yelling back to back to back, and for some reason no one heard us except that one homeless guy that walked by and just looked inside and then just looked away and pretended he saw nothing, which that guy sucks, by the way. If you're ever watching my videos, I'm coming after you. Not actually, please, I'm not a crazy guy. But going on, I remember I got super upset and we were in there for over half an hour. No joke, me and her, we ended up just sitting down on the sides of the sewer and we're just like looking at each other. And once again, I ask her, why did you jump down with me? Like, you could have went and got someone to me. Well, I didn't want you to be here alone. We're in this together. We're in this together for the science project, not for you to be in the sewer with me, is what I yelled at her. And honestly, I was really mad because I really wanted to go home that day and play some Call of Duty Black Ops 2. But clearly, for some reason, this girl had different plans and decided to get stuck in the sewer with me. Anyways, I remember like another hour went by and we were in there for like an hour and a half. And it got to the point where I stood up and said, okay, you know what? We're going to go for a walk. Where are we going to go? We can't get out. We're going to walk into the sewer. We're gonna go see if we can find a way out. What? But it's really dark in here. Yeah, but it's fine. Our eyes will adjust and we won't be in here for long. Maybe we can find the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't really know if that's a good idea, Bubba. No, we're gonna do it because I'd rather not do nothing than do something. So at that moment, me and this girl, we ended up getting up and we ended up walking down the sewer line. It got to the point where it was so dark that it was actually pitch black. It's kind of weird because I thought humans could adjust to like darkness and seeing in the dark, but clearly we actually can't, especially if it's underground. And one thing I definitely realize now is that I could never be a Ninja Turtle. Like, I don't know how the Ninja Turtles do it, but like living underground for a super long time with a rat they call Master Splinter, yeah, you're totally trolling, bro. I could never live down there. So knowing that, I remember it got to the point where we decided to walk back the direction we went and we ended up seeing the sewer crate once again. But at that moment, when we walked back to the sewer hole that we fell in, we ended up hearing a bunch of police sirens. And that's when me and this girl started yelling and screaming back to back. And then we finally saw a cop look over and say, what are you two kids doing down there? We got stuck in the sewer. What? Okay, well, we didn't know people fell in here. We just saw the tape was falling down. We were called to fix it, but we have to call the fire department. You guys just stay down there. We'll be getting you guys soon. At that moment, me and this girl, we ended up waiting like 10 minutes. And for people that are supposed to come and save fires at a good time, they sure take a long time to get two people out of the sewer. So knowing this, me and this girl, we ended up just sitting there and it got to the point where she looks at me and says, yo, so like, I don't know, I think we have like another half an hour down here. Do you want to do anything? No, not really. Why? Well, like, I don't know. Like, once again, I just want to know how big you are. At that moment, I'm not joking. I was so annoyed by her asking all these personal questions to the point where I just whipped out my eggplant. And yeah, not gonna lie, we ended up doing the devil's tango in the sewer. Totally disgusting, but to be fair, I've done it in more disgusting places, which if you guys want to figure out more disgusting places, subscribe to the channel. But yeah, honestly, it got to the point where like 20 to 30 minutes later, finally the fire department came and pulled us out of there and we smelled disgusting. Like, we smelled so bad, bro. It was absolutely insane. And honestly, yeah, that was like basically it. We ended up getting out, and the next day at school, we ended up actually, funny enough, being on the news for being two kids stuck in the sewer, but the whole school knew about it. And yeah, when I wouldn't listen to this babysitter had other ideas. And one of the ideas she ended up doing was literally grabbing me by the hand and dragging me down to her basement. I thought there was gonna be like a TV in there and some video games, but what this babysitter had in mind basically was severely illegal. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy but embarrassing scary story. So this story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was my grade 10 year. Yeah, grade 10, I had a babysitter, but I can explain why. Basically, back when I was in grade 10, I was like a major player, and I'm gonna be honest here, I never really paid attention to anyone nor anything other than girls and I guess Call of Duty, because those were the only two things that my world, I guess, revolved around. But I remember there was one time where I was hanging out at home playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2. It was a Friday and it was my weekend, and I just wanted to enjoy it and do whatever I wanted. But then my mom comes into my room. My mom comes in, looks at me and says, Bubba, do you not have any homework to do? No, I did everything. Why? Well, is there something in your backpack you want to give me? At that moment, I thought she wanted me to hand in my homework to her, but like, it didn't make any sense because not even my mom understands the homework we do nowadays. So I remember I looked at her and I'm like, no, why would I give you my homework? I got an email of your report card. And at that moment, I ended up leaving my Call of Duty match and I turned my chair over to her and said, okay, wait, mom, I can explain. And the reason I was panicking was because my grades were not good at all. They were actually so bad, in fact, that I'm surprised I surpassed high school. But I remember my mom was super upset and she just looks at me super annoyed saying, Baba, like, I don't understand. Like, you said to me that you were doing all the homework. You said you were being a good boy. Mom, I can explain. It's just school got really hard and it's difficult. Okay, well, your teacher said there's a lot of homework you can do. So you're going to do it all this weekend. He emailed me all the assignments. At that moment, I started to worry and I'm like, wait, but mom, you said I can go to my friend's house this weekend. I don't have time to do homework. No, now you do. And actually, you're not going out. You're going to be staying here doing work. What? But that's so boring. At that moment, my mom just shrugs and she walks away, which to be fair, let's be real, arguing with a teenager never gets anywhere. So when I was super upset, I remember later on throughout the day, I kind of just ended up doing my homework, but I at the same time did homework while playing video games. And I guess you could say I'm good at multitasking, but multitasking to the point where I was playing video games and homework, yeah, they don't really mix up. Because as I'm trying to build like my Call of Duty loadout, I'm also thinking about like multiplication questions that really did not make things easier. And I remember later on throughout the day when my mom comes up into my room once again, she looks at me and she saw I was playing Call of Duty and she says to me, Baba, you're supposed to be doing homework. Mom, I'm sorry. I have to just beat this game. You said that the last 100 times. Mom, I'll finish. Just give me a minute. And at that moment, my mom does the most insane thing ever where she unplugs the TV and takes away my controller. But her taking my controller was never really an issue because I ended up just pulling out another one that was under my bed that had stick drift on it. And I just ended up using that instead. And don't get me wrong, it made my game harder, but hey, at least I was still playing. And I want to say 2 hours later, my mom walks back into my room and yeah, she found my other controller and got really upset. And she ends up saying, Baba, that's it. This weekend, you're not going to be at this house. Wait, so you're going to let me go to my friend's house? No, Baba, you're going to have a babysitter. At that moment, I was super confused. But then I realized that my mom ended up getting a babysitter online that has her own like kind of daycare center at her own place. So me being super weirded out, I'm like, Mom, I'm like 15 years old. Why are you going to give me a babysitter? And that's when my mom ends up taking me inside her car and we ended up driving to a woman's place. Now, when me and my mom went to this house, I was really confused on whose house this was. And my mom knocks on the door and this young hot girl, can I just mention, she was actually pretty hot and she was like in her late 20s, ended up opening it. And she says to me, oh, hi. Wait, is this your son? Yes, this is my son. He needs to focus on schoolwork. Oh, I thought he was a lot younger. Is this going to be an issue? No issue. Okay, here you go. My mom ends up handing her like $200 to keep me for the weekend. And basically I ended up stuck in a random woman's house just to do my homework. I was super annoyed. And at this moment, I kind of just wanted like to figure out a way to get out of this situation, just go to my friend's house. So right as my mom ends up leaving the driveway with her car, I ended up looking at this babysitter saying, yo, my friend's house isn't far from here. If you let me go to his place, I'll give you like another $100. You can't just bribe me, Baba. You have to finish your schoolwork. At this moment, this led a really bad first impression, I will say, on this babysitter, but at the same time, I could care less. I remember from there, the babysitter ended up taking me to her dining room and she just ended up setting up my homework that I had to do and just told me to sit there and do all of it. So I ended up sitting there, but sometimes I was on my phone, sometimes I was just looking around. For some reason, I have like this issue back when I was a kid and even still till now to this day where I just can't focus on like one singular thing. It's like literally impossible. I keep looking around, I keep getting distracted, and honestly, I just can't focus. I don't know if I have ADHD or OCD or all the other problems that most humans have, I guess. But honestly, one thing I can say is that when it came to schoolwork, it was so boring and I didn't want to do it. Comment down below if you know what I'm talking about, but honestly, at this moment, I just wanted to go home or just go hang out with my friends and play Call of Duty. So I remember like 3 hours go by and I'm still at this girl's place and she looks over at me and walks up to me saying, so how much homework did you do? None of it is what I say. And she starts fuming. She gets super upset and so mad at me for some reason. Like, no joke. She got so upset to the point where she looks over at me and says, Baba, do your damn homework. Like, come on. What are you doing? Focus up and do your work. Okay, chill out is what I said to her. And one thing I started to realize was that you should never say chill out to a woman. Saying the words chill out to a woman leads to a lot of problems because it got to the point where this babysitter, no joke, ended up grabbing me by my hand and says, oh, you want to see chill out? I'll show you chill out. And she takes me down to her basement and closes the door behind her. And I heard a lock go off. At that moment, I start to worry and I'm like, yo, what in the world? Did you just lock the door? Yeah, and you're not getting out. You're done. And at that moment, I realized I was stuck in the basement. I didn't know why I was stuck down there, but at the same time, like, what she was doing definitely wasn't legal. But I remember I ended up finding a light switch to the basement, and when I turned it on, I realized that I wasn't the first person trapped down here because I started seeing like letters carved into the walls. I saw like a really old dirty mattress that other people have definitely slept on, and I also saw like a little old couch that another person has slept on. There was no one down there but me, by the way, but at this point I was terrified. How many kids kids was she locking in this basement? And is this even like normal to do as a babysitter? Because 100% she definitely has bad reviews on Yelp. But as I was stuck down there, I remember I started to look around and start to panic, trying to figure out if there was a way out of here. And there was a window, funny enough, but the window was like barred off for some reason. So I literally felt like I was in a prison cell inside this woman's house. And as I'm looking around, out of nowhere, I ended up hearing my phone ring. Now the worst part was that I left my phone on her dining room table. So I ended up hearing my phone go off playing Swerving by Lil Mosey. And I started to panic and I'm like, oh my goodness, wait, must be my mom calling. And I can't even answer. But then out of nowhere, I ended up hearing the babysitter pick up my phone and answer it saying, oh, hi. Yeah, Bubba's working on his homework right now. He's really focused in. Yeah, no, he can't come to the phone right now. And at that moment, I started to freak out and I started slamming on the basement door saying, Mom, she trapped me in the basement. Mom, please come back. But by then, the babysitter already hung up. And I started to worry and I yelled, what do you want me to do? I'll do anything. Just let me out. And that's when this babysitter ended up sliding my homework under the door saying, Bubba, do your homework, then I'll consider letting you out. So at that moment, I ended up going on the mattress that was there and I sat down with the pieces of paper that she slid under the door and I started doing my homework. I started trying to do it as hard as I could. And honestly, it sucked because I don't actually remember how to do the homework. That's probably why I never ended up doing it anyways. But I kept trying to do it and I got to the point where I just decided to fake a bunch of numbers on there and just pretend I did everything. And when I finished writing down all the answers, or should I say answers, I ended up yelling at the basement door saying, okay, I finished all my homework. You did it all in less than 10 minutes? Yeah, I'm gifted. Yeah, giftedly stupid. You're 100% not done your homework. I'm gonna give you another half an hour. So I ended up just sitting there for half an hour, just staring at the walls and staring at all the initials that were down there on that wall. And I thought to myself, 100% once I get out of here, this babysitter is going to jail. Half an hour goes by and I remember she finally ends up opening the basement door, but she didn't let me out. She closed it right behind her, walked up to me and said, here, let me see what you've done. I ended up handing in my homework to her and she looks at it and she said, are you sure you did all these right? Yeah, it's just a really weird high school formula. I'm not sure, is what she says. And she ended up basically realizing what I did to the point where she actually ended up taking my homework with her out the door and closed it right behind her and locked it once again. I was stuck in that basement for 2 days. 2 days literally went by and she would come down and give me food once in a while, but I was stuck down there for 2 whole days. My whole weekend was ruined. It totally sucked and I got so upset. And the only thing that was in my mind the last 2 days was how I was so excited to get out of this basement and call the cops on her. But I remember on the second day when my mom was gonna come pick me up, the babysitter ends up letting me out and she tried to make me sign some consent forms, kind of like a thing called a non-disclosure agreement, which is an NDA, which means that I cannot say anything, by the way, that happened in this house, which 100% I wasn't gonna sign because I wanted to out her. So when she realized I wouldn't sign the papers, she got super upset, but luckily my mom ended up coming to the house on time. I ended up going into my mom's car and I ended up telling her like everything she did. And my mom's like, Baba, there's no way all that's happened. She's a really good babysitter. No, Mom, she was trying to make me sign a piece of paper that said I can't say anything, but I didn't sign it. Please, Mom, just call the cops. At that moment, my mom saw that I was really panicking about things and she ended up basically calling 911 and cops ended up going to her place. But when the cops came to her place and I was invited over to basically prove where I was, we ended up going down to the basement and the whole basement was totally different. The basement wasn't the same one I was in, but it was a more nice basement with a TV and an Xbox and a nice couch that was new. There was no mattress and markings on the wall. I was so confused and the cops thought I was lying the whole time because this babysitter tried to make me do my homework. Honestly, I don't know how she did it, but if you guys don't believe this babysitter's real, then fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.